Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're looking into a really tragic and kind of puzzling case. We're going to do a deep dive into the death of Adan Manzano. He was a young, up-and-coming sports reporter who was down in New Orleans to cover the Super Bowl this year. What seemed like a heartbreaking but kind of straightforward loss has taken a really dark turn, and we're here to kind of unpack what we know so far.
I think what's particularly intriguing is how quickly this case went from a routine assignment for a reporter to a potential crime scene. And I think it really raises questions about vulnerability, especially at these high-profile events like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you would think with all the security measures in place during a huge event like that, someone would be safe. So, just to remind our listeners, Adan Manzano was found dead in his hotel room in Kenner, Louisiana on February 5th of this year, 2025. And the police quickly focused their investigation on a woman named Danette Colbert, who was seen on security footage entering Manzano's room. So what makes this more than just a sad incident?
Well, the preliminary toxicology report showed that Manzano had benzodiazepine in his system, specifically Xanax. And this is a crucial detail because he did not have a prescription for this type of drug.
So could this mean that Manzano was drugged? What should we know about Xanax and its effects?
Well, the Xanax found in Manzano's system is a type of benzodiazepine, which is a class of drugs often prescribed for things like anxiety or insomnia. They have really strong sedative effect, which in larger doses or if combined with other substances can be really dangerous. In fact, overdoses can lead to extreme drowsiness and in some cases even death.
Wow, okay, so that obviously raises a lot of questions. So naturally the police focused on Danette Colbert. What did they find when they started, digging into her background?
It's really interesting because they uncovered some pretty compelling evidence that links Colbert to the scene. After leaving Manzano's room, she was caught on camera using his credit card at a nearby gas station. And then she kind of went on a little shopping spree, again using his card. And to make matters worse, the police actually found Xanax at Colbert's residence.
So was this just a random encounter gone wrong, or could this be something more? Because Colbert has a history, right?
She does. Colbert has prior convictions for things like theft and fraud in Louisiana. And what's even more concerning is that back in 2022, she was arrested twice in Las Vegas for remarkably similar incidents.
Wait, what do you mean similar incidents?
In both of those Las Vegas cases, Colbert was accused of drugging men in hotel rooms and then stealing from them. But these charges were eventually dismissed because, for whatever reason, the victims chose not to testify.
Wow. Okay, so are we looking at a tragic coincidence here, or is there a pattern of behavior emerging? What do you think?
It's a tough question to answer. On the one hand, we have a tragic death and a woman with a history that seems to align with the circumstances. But could this be a case of mistaken identity or just a really unfortunate series of events? It's just too early to say for sure.
Yeah, I guess it's like those crime dramas where you try to piece together all these seemingly unrelated events. But this is not a TV show. This is someone's life. And with such high stakes, what's next for this investigation? What are the authorities saying?
Well, Detective McCormick from the Kenner Police Department has been pretty vocal about his concerns for public safety. He's really been adamant about keeping Colbert behind bars, and he pushed to have her held without bond, deeming her a flight risk, and the judge granted that. So, it's clear the authorities are taking this very seriously.
But what about Colbert? I mean, what's her side of the story?
Her attorney, Stavros Panagolopoulos, insists that the police are jumping to conclusions. He's arguing that they are assuming Colbert's connection to Manzano's death. And he's really emphasizing her right to present evidence in court, and basically urging everyone not to rush to judgment.
It is fair to remember that everyone deserves a fair trial, right? And these are just allegations at this point. But while we wait for the legal proceedings to unfold, we can't forget the human cost of this tragedy. Can you kind of remind our listener about Adan Manzano's life, beyond just these headlines?
Absolutely. I think it's easy to get caught up in all the legal aspects, but we have to remember that a life was lost and a family is grieving. Adan Manzano was a rising star at his station, KGKC in Kansas City. He was dedicated to his craft, and those who knew him spoke really highly of his professionalism and his impact on the community.
It's just so heartbreaking because he was a young widower raising his 2-year-old daughter alone. He just lost his wife in a car crash last year.
Yeah. And the tributes from his employer, KGKC, really highlight what a loss this is, not just for them, but for the community and of course, for his daughter. They praised his dedication, the positive impact he had on everyone around him. And And this case really underscores that behind all the headlines and legal drama, there's a real person who will be deeply, deeply missed.
It's such a stark reminder that this is more than just a case. It's about a life cut way too short and a family that's now shattered. And unfortunately, this is a developing story. So stay with us as we, dive further into the details and explore the potential implications of this case.
Exactly. There are still so many unanswered questions, and we're going to continue to examine all the evidence, the legal proceedings, and the wider context surrounding this very tragic event.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine what Manzano's family must be going through right now, and it makes you wonder how this could have even happened, especially, during an event as big and you would think secure as the Super Bowl.
That is a really good point. We often hear about, scams or thefts, targeting tourists during big events. But this case just takes things to a whole other level. It's really scary to think about. And it makes you wonder about security measures, even at these high-profile events. Are they really as effective as we think they are?
Right, exactly. You would think with all that extra security, people would be more vigilant too, but it is easy to get, caught up in the excitement and kind of let your guard down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this case really highlights that, danger can really lurk in those seemingly safe environments. It's not about living in fear, but it's about being aware and trusting your instincts if something feels off.
It is a chilling thought, but we can't ignore the possibility that incidents like this might be more common than we realize. And what's concerning is that in Colbert's previous cases in Las Vegas, the alleged victims didn't even testify.
Yeah, those cases from 2022 are really interesting because they pretty much exactly mirror the circumstances surrounding Manzano's death. And the fact that those victims didn't come forward just adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing. We can only speculate about why they didn't, but it does make you wonder if there are other potential victims out there who haven't reported, similar incidents.
Yeah. It really highlights the challenges in prosecuting cases like this. And it really underscores the importance of supporting victims and encouraging them to come forward no matter how difficult it may seem.
Absolutely. Creating a safe and supportive environment for victims to report these types of crimes it's absolutely crucial.
Hmm.
The fear of retaliation, the stigma, or even just the emotional toll, it can be incredibly overwhelming. But by encouraging victims to speak out, we can start working towards holding these perpetrators accountable and hopefully preventing, future tragedies.
So while this legal battle plays out, there are these larger implications to consider. And in this case, it really brings up a crucial conversation about, vulnerability and the potential for exploitation, especially during large events when people might be more relaxed and less cautious.
You're so right. We tend to assume that being in a crowd provides some sort of safety in numbers, but this case shows us that that danger can still exist even in those seemingly ordinary encounters. You're at a major event, you're surrounded by people, you're excited, and your guard might be down. So it's the perfect opportunity for someone with bad intentions to take advantage.
It's almost like a cautionary tale, right? It's a reminder to stay vigilant and be aware of your surroundings even when you're, caught up in the moment.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just these large scale events. It applies to everyday life as well. Being mindful of who you're with, not leaving your drinks unattended, being cautious about sharing personal information. These are all basic precautions that can make a huge difference.
Those are really great points. And it goes beyond personal safety, too. This case makes us think about how we respond to crimes like this as a society.
That's right. It forces us to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Hmm.
Like, how can we better support victims? How can we make sure that these perpetrators are actually held accountable? And maybe most importantly, how can we prevent these tragedies from happening in the first place?
These are really complex questions, and there are definitely no easy answers. But it's a conversation that we need to have. So as we wait for more information, what should we be paying attention to in this case? What are the key things to watch for?
Well, the final autopsy and toxicology report will be critical in determining the exact cause of Manzano's death and whether there was any foul play involved. Those findings could give us some more concrete evidence to either support or challenge the allegations against Colbert.
Yeah, and I would imagine those findings will be really central to the prosecution's case, if they decide to file charges.
Absolutely. They're going to need to build a really strong case that directly links Colbert's actions to Manzano's death. It's going to be interesting to see how all the evidence plays out and how the defense will counter those arguments.
It sounds like we have a long road ahead in terms of the legal process.
Oh, for sure. This case is far from over. And it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds in court.
And as we follow, the legal proceedings, it's important to remember that this is more than just a legal battle.
Yeah, there's a human element to this story that we can't forget. Ed Manzano was a talented young man with a whole future ahead of him, and his death has left a huge hole in the lives of those who knew and loved him.
Absolutely. And his young daughter, left without either parent, is facing a future that is just unimaginable. And it makes you think about the wider effects of these tragedies and the long-term impact on families and communities.
Yeah.
It really is. And it just reminds us all that behind the headlines and the court cases and everything, there are real people, whose lives are changed forever by these awful events.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We tend to focus on the immediate details of the case, but we can't lose sight of that long-term impact on the victims and their families. And in this case, Mantrano's daughter is now left without either parent. And that's just an unimaginable burden for a child to carry.
It really is. And it makes you think, are there anything that we can learn from this awful situation, something that goes beyond this specific case?
I think this case is like a wake-up call for all of us. It's telling us that we need to be more aware of our surroundings and take those extra steps to protect ourselves, especially when we're away from home or in a new environment. It's really easy to get complacent, especially in a world that feels like it's getting more and more dangerous. But this case shows us that we can be vulnerable even in places that we think are safe.
It's like you said before, it's not about living in fear, but about, just being aware and taking simple precautions. And sometimes we dismiss those safety tips as just common sense, but this really shows us how important they can be.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting ourselves physically, It's also about being cautious with our personal information, too. We live in this digital age where information is so readily available, and it's easier than ever for someone to use that information in a harmful way.
That's a really good point. It's a reminder to be careful about what we share, both online and in person. So as we wait for the legal process to play out and for more information to come to light, what would you say is the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
Well, I hope that this deep dive has encouraged our listeners to be more careful and just more proactive about their own safety and the safety of their loved ones. It's about being aware, being prepared, and just trusting your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
That's a powerful message, and one that I hope everyone listening really takes to heart. And as we wrap up this episode today, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. While we wait for answers in Adan Manzano's case, let's remember him not just as a victim, but as a young man, talented and with so much potential, whose life was tragically cut short. Let's let his story be a reminder to cherish the people we love, to make the most of every day, and to fight for a safer world for all of us, for ourselves and for the generations to come.
Well said. This case really is a heartbreaking reminder that life is precious, and we should never take our safety or the safety of our loved ones for granted.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.